tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Nathaniel Hughes had built his empire from nothing. 23 years ago, he'd walked into the first bank with calloused hands and a business plan sketched on napkins. Now, Hughes Construction was the premier commercial developer in 3 states, with Amanda by his side, or so he thought. He'd met Amanda McCoy at a charity gala 15 years ago. She was radiant, ambitious, and came from a connected family. Her uncle Clark McCoy was a respected state judge, and the McCoy name carried weight in legal circles. Amanda had seemed like the perfect partner for a man building something significant. Vincent Wiley entered their lives 3 years ago as Amanda's business consultant. He was smooth, educated at Princeton, and had an MBA from Wharton. Vincent claimed to specialize in wealth optimization for high-net-worth families. Nathaniel had been skeptical initially. Something about Vincent's too-perfect smile and the way he lingered too long when shaking Amanda's hand. But Amanda insisted Vincent was helping her establish her own investment portfolio separate from Hughes Construction. "I want to contribute to our future, not just be a passenger," she'd said, and Nathaniel respected that independence. He was wrong, too. Vincent began spending more time at their house, often staying for dinner, sometimes working late with Amanda in her home office. Nathaniel noticed the way Amanda dressed differently on days Vincent visited. Softer fabrics, more attention to her appearance. He noticed Vincent's gifts to both of them that clearly favor Amanda's tastes. But Nathaniel Hughes wasn't a man who acted on suspicion alone. He was a builder, methodical and patient. What Nathaniel didn't know was that Amanda and Vincent had been planning for 18 months. Vincent wasn't just sleeping with Amanda. He was studying Nathaniel's business, mapping his assets, and preparing a hostile takeover disguised as a divorce settlement. Amanda's uncle Clark had already agreed to expedite the proceedings and freeze Nathaniel's assets to protect the marital estate. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Christmas Eve would provide the perfect distraction. Family traditions would keep Nathaniel occupied while Clark signed the preliminary orders. By Boxing Day, Nathaniel would wake up to find himself legally separated from his life's work, with Amanda and Vincent positioned to acquire Hughes Construction at a fraction of its value through emergency liquidation. What they hadn't counted on was Nathaniel's mentor, Lawrence Fisher. The retired federal judge had taken Nathaniel under his wing years ago, not just as a business advisor, but as a father figure. Lawrence had taught Nathaniel that in any war, information was the ultimate weapon. As Christmas Eve approached, Nathaniel felt the subtle changes in his household. Amanda's secretive phone calls, Vincent's increased presence, the way conversations stopped when he entered rooms. But Nathaniel Hughes had learned long ago that the most dangerous man is one who appears to suspect nothing while seeing everything. Chapter 2. The Discovery. Christmas Eve at the Hughes mansion was always a grand affair. Amanda insisted on maintaining appearances. Their annual dinner party for 40 guests, complete with a string quartet and enough prime rib to feed an army. Nathaniel moved through the evening playing his role perfectly. The successful businessman celebrating with his beautiful wife. Amanda wore red silk and diamonds, accepting compliments on her hosting skills with practiced grace. Vincent circulated among the guests, making connections, positioning himself as Amanda's partner in all but name. Judge Clark McCoy attended as family, regaling guests with stories of landmark cases while keeping an eye on his watch. At 9:47 p.m., Amanda approached Nathaniel with a concerned expression. "Honey, the lights in the garage went out. I think we tripped a breaker. Could you check? I don't want the catering staff stumbling around in the dark." Nathaniel nodded, kissing her cheek. Her perfume was different tonight, something Vincent had probably given her. He walked through the connecting hallway to the garage, flipping on his phone's flashlight as he approached the breaker box. That's when he saw them. 3 manila folders stacked beside his toolbox, clearly placed there recently. The top folder was labeled Hughes versus Hughes, Asset Freeze Order. Nathaniel's blood turned to ice as he opened it. The divorce petition was dated 2 weeks ago. Amanda was seeking not just half of everything, but full control of Hughes Construction, claiming Nathaniel was fiscally irresponsible and posed a flight risk with company assets. Clark McCoy's signature was already on a temporary restraining order preventing Nathaniel from accessing business accounts. The papers showed Vincent Wiley as Amanda's financial advisor and proposed interim manager of Hughes Construction. Nathaniel photographed every page with steady hands, his mind racing through implications. Then he heard voices from the kitchen, Amanda and Clark talking in hushed tones near the servants' entrance. Moving silently, Nathaniel positioned himself where he could observe through the cracked door. Amanda and Vincent stood close together, Vincent's hand on her lower back in a gesture of ownership. Clark raised a glass of Nathaniel's 30-year Macallan. "To new beginnings," Clark said. "By tomorrow night, Hughes Construction will be under new management." "And Nathaniel?" Amanda asked. "Will be so buried in legal complications he won't know which way is up," Vincent replied. "My people are already prepared to move on the emergency acquisition. We'll have controlling interest before he can hire competent counsel." Amanda laughed, a sound Nathaniel had once found beautiful. "Poor Nathan. He's so trusting. He never saw this coming." "Trust is a weakness in business," Vincent said, pulling Amanda closer. "Something I'll never be accused of." They kissed then, deep and familiar, while Clark McCoy watched with approval. Nathaniel stood in the darkness, feeling something fundamental shift inside him. The man who had built an empire through handshake deals and mutual respect was dying, replaced by something colder and infinitely more dangerous. Nathaniel slipped back through the garage and returned to the party. He found the actual trip breaker, caused by the kitchen staff overloading a circuit, and reset it. When he rejoined the festivities, his smile was perfect, his conversation engaging. No one noticed that Nathaniel Hughes had just declared war. At 11:15 p.m., Nathaniel excused himself to the bathroom and made a single phone call to Lawrence Fisher. "Lawrence, it's Nathan. I need the nuclear option." "How nuclear?" the old judge asked without hesitation. "Scorched earth. Complete annihilation. No survivors. I'll make some calls." "How long do we have?" "They move tomorrow. I need everything you've got on Clark McCoy by dawn." "Consider it done." "Nathan." "Yes. Remember what I taught you about war. That mercy is a luxury winners can afford, but losers never survive to regret." "Exactly. Good hunting." Chapter 3. The Countermove. Nathaniel left his house at 5:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, telling Amanda he needed to check on a job site. She barely looked up from her phone, probably texting Vincent. Nathaniel drove aimlessly for 3 hours, his mind processing Lawrence Fisher's intel. Clark McCoy wasn't just corrupt, he was sloppy. Lawrence's contacts in federal law enforcement had been building a file on Clark for 2 years. Fixed sentences for political allies, expedited rulings for campaign contributors, and a pattern of ethical violations that would make a career prosecutor salivate. But they'd never had enough evidence to move forward. Until now, Lawrence had spent Christmas Eve pulling favors and making promises. By dawn, he'd compiled a devastating dossier. Bank records showing payments from litigants who'd won favorable rulings, photographs of Clark at a private club that illegally excluded minorities, recordings of him making crude jokes about defendants in his courtroom. But the crown jewel was Clark's relationship with Vincent Wiley. Vincent's consulting business was a shell company that had received $200,000 from Clark over 18 months. Payments disguised as legal research, but clearly kickback for steering wealthy clients toward prearranged divorce settlements. Amanda wasn't Vincent's first target. She was his fifth. Vincent specialized in seducing wives of successful businessmen, then partnering with Clark McCoy to orchestrate asset transfers through rigged divorce proceedings. But Lawrence Fisher had saved the best revelation for last. Vincent Wiley wasn't who he claimed to be. His real name was Vincent Walsh, and he was already married to Clark McCoy's daughter, Christina McCoy. The three of them had been running this scam for years, with Christina playing the understanding wife, while Vincent seduced Marks and Clark provided legal cover. Nathaniel felt something predatory stir in his chest. They'd chosen the wrong prey. When Nathaniel returned home at 9 a.m., Amanda was in the kitchen making coffee, still in her silk pajamas. She looked beautiful and treacherous in the morning light. "How was the job site?" she asked without real interest. "Fine. Just checking the foundation work." Nathaniel poured himself coffee, studying his wife's face. The foundation is the most important part of any project. If it's compromised, everything built on top eventually collapses. Amanda nodded absently, scrolling through her phone. Probably more messages from Vincent. "Amanda, I've been thinking about us," Nathaniel said carefully. That got her attention. "What do you mean? I know I've been focused on work lately. Maybe we should take that vacation you mentioned. Get away from everything, just the two of us." Amanda's expression flickered, surprise, then calculation. "That sounds nice, but maybe we should wait until after the holidays. I have some business things to finalize." "Of course. Your investment portfolio with Vincent." "Yes, exactly." Amanda's smile was warm and false. "He's been so helpful." Nathaniel nodded, then did something that would later prove crucial. He pulled Amanda close and kissed her deeply, his hands tangling in her hair. For a moment, she melted against him, and he felt the ghost of what they'd once been. "I love you," he whispered against her ear. "I love you too," she whispered back, and Nathaniel knew she was lying. That afternoon, while Amanda attended a Christmas brunch that was actually a strategy session with Vincent and Clark, Nathaniel made his preparations. He transferred $50,000 from a personal account into an untraceable cryptocurrency wallet. He created detailed digital files containing every piece of evidence Lawrence had provided, and he made 3 very specific phone calls. The first was to Santos Little, a private investigator who owed Nathaniel a significant favor. The second was to Corey Banks, a former military contractor who specialized in discrete solutions for complex problems. The third was to Perry Morrison, a journalist with the state's largest newspaper who'd been investigating judicial corruption for years. By evening, Nathaniel's phone buzzed with the first of what would become 43 missed calls. But he was already 2 hours into a long drive, with Amanda and Vincent's Christmas gifts sitting on his passenger seat. Gifts they'd never receive. The war had begun, and Nathaniel Hughes intended to win it absolutely. Chapter 4. The Trap is Set. When Nathaniel returned home on December 26th, the house felt different. Amanda greeted him with forced enthusiasm, but her eyes held something new: uncertainty. Vincent Carr was in the driveway, and through the window, Nathaniel could see him pacing in the living room, phone pressed to his ear. "Where were you?" Amanda asked, trying to sound casual. "You missed Christmas dinner." "Needed time to think," Nathaniel replied, setting down his overnight bag. "Christmas has a way of clarifying things." Vincent appeared in the doorway, his usually perfect composure cracked. "Nathan, good to see you." Amanda was worried. "Vincent, working on Christmas. Just some urgent client matters." Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You know how it is." Nathaniel knew exactly how it was. Clark McCoy had been arrested at 6 a.m. by federal agents on charges of judicial corruption and racketeering. The news had broken 3 hours ago, sending shockwaves through the legal community. Without Clark's protection, Amanda and Vincent's entire plan had collapsed overnight. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. He was just getting started. "Actually, Vincent, I'm glad you're here," Nathaniel said, settling into his leather chair with predatory calm. "I've been reconsidering our arrangement." "What arrangement?" Vincent asked too quickly. "Amanda's investment portfolio. I've decided to take a more active role in our finances." Nathaniel pulled out his phone and scrolled through bank statements. It's fascinating what you can learn when you really dig into the numbers. Amanda and Vincent exchanged glances. They thought Nathaniel was reacting to Clark's arrest, scrambling to protect his assets. They didn't realize he was orchestrating their destruction. "Nathan, we should discuss this privately," Amanda said. "No need for privacy between partners," Nathaniel replied. "Vincent, you mentioned your expertise in wealth optimization. I'd love to hear more about your previous successes." Vincent straightened, falling back on his practiced charm. "I've helped several families maximize their financial potential through strategic restructuring." "Families like the Robertsons? The Elliots? The Wilsons?" Vincent's face went white. Those were the names of his previous marks, information that shouldn't have been available to Nathaniel. I don't discuss other clients' affairs. Of course not. Professional discretion. Nathaniel stood and walked to the window, his tone conversational. Though I imagine Grant Wilson was disappointed when his divorce settlement left him with 15% of his own company. Nathan, where are you getting at? Amanda demanded. I'm getting at the fact that your business partner has been running a sophisticated con game, sweetheart, and you've been helping him. The silence that followed was electric. Vincent's hand moved instinctively toward his phone, but Nathaniel was already speaking again. Vincent Walsh, interesting name change, by the way, has been targeting successful businessmen for years. He seduces their wives, builds detailed intelligence on their assets, then collaborates with Clark McCoy to orchestrate favorable divorce settlements. Quite ingenious, really. Amanda's face drained of color. Nathan, I don't know what you think you know. I know that Vincent is married to Clark McCoy's daughter. I know about the shell company payments. I know about the 5 previous families you've destroyed. Nathaniel turned from the window, his eyes cold as winter steel. Most importantly, I know you thought I was an easy mark. Vincent bolted for the door, but Santos Little stepped into the hallway, blocking his exit. Santos was built like a linebacker and had spent 15 years in military intelligence before becoming a private investigator. Going somewhere, Vincent? Santos asked pleasantly. This is kidnapping, Vincent snarled. This is a conversation, Nathaniel corrected. Sit down. For the next hour, Nathaniel laid out everything he knew. Vincent's real identity, his marriage to Christina McCoy, the pattern of previous cons, and the intricate financial web they'd woven around Hughes Construction. Amanda sat frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. What do you want? Vincent finally asked. Justice, Nathaniel replied. But we'll start with restitution. Nathaniel pulled out a contract he'd prepared earlier. Vincent, you're going to transfer every asset from your shell companies to a fund for your previous victims. Amanda, you're going to sign over your interest in all marital property and disappear from my life forever. And if we refuse, Amanda whispered. Nathaniel smiled, an expression devoid of warmth. Then tomorrow's headlines will destroy what's left of your reputations. Vincent will join Clark in federal prison. And Amanda, you'll discover that adultery still carries financial consequences in this state. But Nathaniel had one more surprise. He turned to Amanda with something almost resembling sadness. Before you sign anything, sweetheart, you should know, I've been recording our conversations for the past 6 months. Amanda's eyes widened in horror as Nathaniel played a brief audio clip. Her voice, clear and unmistakable, discussing their plans to eliminate Nathan from the picture and take everything he's built. Insurance, Nathaniel explained. I've always believed in protecting my investments. Chapter 5. The hunt continues. 3 days passed in careful orchestration. Amanda and Vincent signed the documents, their signatures shaking with rage and defeat. They thought their punishment was financial ruin and public humiliation. They were wrong. Nathaniel Hughes was just beginning his masterpiece. Vincent had moved into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, his credit cards frozen and his bank accounts seized. Amanda was staying with her sister, Erin Edwards, who lived in a cramped apartment across the city. They thought distance would provide safety. They underestimated their predator. Perry Morrison's expose had run on the front page for 3 consecutive days. The McCoy connection, how a state judge conspired to steal millions, detailed the entire operation with devastating precision. Vincent's previous victims came forward, filing a class action lawsuit that would ensure he never practiced his trade again. Clark McCoy had already been denied bail, facing federal charges that carried a minimum 20-year sentence. But Nathaniel wasn't satisfied with legal justice. He wanted something more personal. Corey Banks was a ghost in Vincent's life now. The former military contractor followed Vincent everywhere, documenting his movements, his desperate phone calls to lawyers who wouldn't take his case, his attempts to contact old associates who no longer returned his messages. Corey had skills learned in darker places than courtrooms, and he used them to make Vincent understand true helplessness. Vincent's food orders were mysteriously canceled. His utility bills disappeared from his mailbox, resulting in service disconnections. His rental car suffered mechanical problems that stranded him in increasingly dangerous neighborhoods. Nothing illegal, nothing traceable, but enough to make Vincent realize he was being hunted. Amanda faced subtler torments. Her sister Erin began asking uncomfortable questions about Amanda's finances, her marriage, her sudden need for shelter. Social circles that had once welcomed Amanda now whispered behind closed doors. Invitations stopped coming. Old friends stopped returning calls. But Nathaniel's cruelest stroke was psychological. He sent Amanda a single red rose each day, delivered to wherever she was staying, with notes that referenced their shared memories. Remember our first Christmas? One read, "You wore red silk, just like that night." Another said, "I still love the way you laugh when you think no one is watching." The roses were beautiful and terrifying because they proved Nathaniel could reach her anywhere, anytime. Amanda understood she was being stalked by a man who had once promised to protect her forever. On December 30th, Vincent finally broke. He called Nathaniel from a payphone outside a 24-hour diner, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "What do you want from me?" Vincent pleaded. "I've lost everything. We both have. Isn't that enough?" "Everything." Nathaniel's voice was silk over steel. "Vincent, you destroyed 5 families before you came for mine. You stole children's college funds, retirement savings, entire life's work. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? It was business. Just business." "No, Vincent. Business is what I do. What you did was predation, and predators need to be stopped permanently. I'll leave town. You'll never see me again." "You're not getting it," Nathaniel said patiently. "This isn't about territory. This is about making sure you never hurt anyone again. Ever." Vincent hung up, but Nathaniel was already 3 moves ahead. Through Corey Banks, he learned about Christina McCoy Walsh, Vincent's actual wife, who was facing her own federal charges as an accessory to her father's crimes. Christina had been calling Vincent desperately, begging him to help her make bail, to hire her a lawyer, to do something to save their marriage. Vincent had been ignoring her calls. That gave Nathaniel an idea that would complete his revenge in the most poetic way possible. On New Year's Eve, while Amanda and Vincent separately contemplated their ruined lives, Nathaniel made his final moves. He arranged for Christina McCoy Walsh to receive evidence of her husband's infidelities, not just with Amanda, but with all his previous marks. Photos, hotel receipts, love letters Vincent had written to other women while married to her. He also ensured that Vincent's previous victims learned about Christina's role in their destruction. The woman who had played the understanding wife while her husband seduced and robbed other families was about to face their collective fury. But Nathaniel saved his masterpiece for last. On January 1st, he arranged for Vincent and Amanda to receive identical messages. "Meet me at the warehouse. Come alone. This ends tonight." They came, separately, driven by desperation and the slim hope that Nathaniel might offer them one final chance at mercy. They were about to learn that Nathaniel Hughes had no mercy left to give. Chapter 6, The Reckoning begins. Santos stepped into the light, his expression professional. Vincent Walsh has been running this operation for 7 years, targeting a total of 12 families across 3 states. Total theft, approximately $47 million. But more significantly, 2 of his previous marks did commit suicide. Grant Wilson and Mark Park both killed themselves rather than face the financial ruin Vincent orchestrated. 2 men are dead because of you, Nathaniel said quietly. 2 fathers who couldn't bear the shame of losing everything to a con artist and his collaborators. Their children grew up without fathers because you were too lazy to earn money honestly. Vincent began hyperventilating. "I never meant for anyone to die. They were weak. They couldn't handle." Nathaniel's hand moved faster than thought, striking Vincent across the face with enough force to snap his head sideways. Blood flowed from the man's split lip. "They were destroyed," Nathaniel corrected. "Systematically, methodically destroyed by a predator who studied their weaknesses and exploited their trust. Just like you planned to do to me." Amanda found her voice. "Nathan, please. I know what we did was wrong, but we can make this right." "We can." "Can what?" Bring Grant Wilson and Mark Park back to life? Restore their children's faith in justice? Undo the trauma you've inflicted on 12 families? Nathaniel shook his head. Amanda, you still don't understand. You're not the victim here. You're the monster. Nathaniel returned to the workbench and picked up 2 documents. These are confessions. Complete, detailed admissions of your crimes, including the planned murder. You're going to sign them. And if we refuse? Vincent asked through his bloodied mouth. Then you'll disappear, Nathaniel said simply. Permanently. Your bodies will never be found. Your families will spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened to you. And 12 victims' families will finally have closure. The warehouse fell silent except for Amanda's quiet sobbing. Vincent stared at the confession in Nathaniel's hands, calculating odds he couldn't win. If we sign, Vincent said finally, what happens then? Then you live, Nathaniel replied, in federal prison, serving consecutive life sentences for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and racketeering. You'll die behind bars, but you'll die naturally. That's not much of a choice. It's more mercy than you showed Grant Wilson and Mark Park. Vincent looked at Amanda, seeing his own desperation reflected in her eyes. They had planned to murder Nathaniel and steal his life's work. Now they faced the consequences of choosing the wrong prey. Where do we sign? Amanda whispered. Nathaniel smiled, his first genuine expression of satisfaction in days. Right here. Chapter 8. The Price of Betrayal. The confessions were signed at 3:17 a.m. on January 2nd. Vincent's signature shook with rage and defeat. Amanda's was barely legible through her tears. But both documents were legally binding admissions that would ensure they never saw freedom again. Excellent, Nathaniel said, reviewing the pages carefully. Santos, please ensure these reach the appropriate federal prosecutors by 9 a.m. Include all supporting evidence we've compiled. What about them? Santos nodded toward the prisoners. They have one more lesson to learn. Nathaniel pulled out his phone and dialed number. Perry? It's Nathan Hughes. Yes, I know it's late. I have a story that will make your career. No, bigger than McCoy expose. Much bigger. Within 2 hours, FBI agents surrounded the warehouse. Amanda and Vincent were arrested on federal charges of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and racketeering. The confessions ensured there would be no plea bargains, no reduced sentences, no early parole. But Nathaniel's masterpiece wasn't the arrests. It was what happened next. Perry Morrison's follow-up story ran with the headline, Murder Plot Exposed, the dark truth behind the McCoy conspiracy. The article revealed not just Vincent and Amanda's crimes, but the full scope of their operation. Photographs of the 12 victim families ran alongside financial records showing exactly how much each had lost. Most devastating were the interviews with Grant Wilson's and Mark Park's children, now young adults who had grown up believing their fathers were weak men who had abandoned their families. Learning that their fathers had been murdered by a sophisticated criminal enterprise, that their suicides were actually the final victory in a calculated campaign of psychological warfare, transformed their grief into righteous fury. The Wilson and Park families filed wrongful death lawsuits seeking not just damages, but criminal prosecution for indirect murder. Vincent and Amanda faced additional charges in multiple jurisdictions, ensuring they would never be eligible for parole. But Nathaniel saved his cruelest stroke for last. 3 days after the arrests, he visited Christina McCoy Walsh in the county jail where she awaited her own trial. The woman who had played the understanding wife while her husband seduced and robbed other families looked fragile in her orange jumpsuit. Mrs. Walsh, Nathaniel said, sitting across from her in the visiting room. I wanted to speak with you about your husband. What about him? Her voice was hollow, defeated. He's been offered a plea deal, 25 years instead of life, in exchange for testifying against everyone else involved in your father's operation. Christina's eyes flickered with hope. Vincent wouldn't. He already has. Nathaniel placed a document on the table between them. His testimony specifically implicates you as the operations financial coordinator. According to Vincent, you managed the money laundering and asset transfers while he seduced the targets. That's not true. I barely knew what they were doing. Vincent says otherwise. He claims you recruited the victims, researched their financial situations, and planned the seduction strategies. He's painted you as the mastermind behind the entire operation. Christina stared at the document in horror. He's lying to save himself. Yes, Nathaniel agreed. Just like he lied to every woman he seduced, every family he destroyed, and every partner he betrayed. Vincent Walsh is exactly what he's always been, a predator who will sacrifice anyone to protect himself. Nathaniel stood to leave, then paused. Mrs. Walsh, you should know, Amanda received the same deal. She's also testified that you were the mastermind. Between your husband and your father's co-conspirator, you're facing 3 consecutive life sentences. Wait, Christina called as Nathaniel walked away. What do you want? Nothing, he replied without turning back. I just wanted you to understand who you married. By the end of January, the conspiracy had completely collapsed. Clark McCoy died of a heart attack in federal custody, unable to face the shame of his exposure. Vincent and Amanda were sentenced to life without parole, their plea deals revoked when investigators discovered they had lied about Christina's involvement. Christina herself received 60 years, her marriage destroyed, and her family name permanently tainted. The 12 victim families received full restitution from seized assets, plus additional damages that ensured their children's futures were secure. Grant Wilson's and Mark Park's children established foundations in their fathers' names, dedicated to helping families destroyed by financial fraud. The warehouse sat in the industrial district like a steel cathedral, its windows dark against the winter sky. Nathaniel had purchased the building 6 months ago as storage for Hughes construction equipment, but tonight it would serve a different purpose. Vincent arrived first, his rented sedan struggling through the snow-covered parking lot. He looked haggard, his expensive clothes wrinkled from days of sleeping in cheap motels. The confident predator who had entered Nathaniel's life was gone, replaced by a desperate man who jumped at shadows. Amanda arrived 20 minutes later, driving her sister's rusted Honda. Even in her diminished circumstances, she maintained traces of her former elegance, her posture straight, her chin defiant. But her eyes held the hunted look of prey that finally understood its situation. Inside the warehouse, Nathaniel waited in the center of a pool of light, surrounded by darkness that could hide anything. He dressed for the occasion, not in his usual business attire, but in the work clothes he'd worn while building his empire. Jeans, boots, a flannel shirt that had seen real labor. "Thank you both for coming," he said as they entered separately, each keeping distance from the other. "I wanted to speak with you one final time." "Nathan, please," Amanda began, but he raised a hand to silence her. "You'll speak when I give you permission. Tonight, you listen." Vincent tried to maintain his composure. "Look, Nathan, we understand you're angry." "Angry?" Nathaniel laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Vincent, anger is what you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic. What I feel for you transcends mere emotion." Nathaniel began walking slowly around them, like a predator circling wounded prey. "For weeks, I've watched you both. Amanda, you've discovered what it's like to depend on other people's charity. Vincent, you've learned what it feels like to be hunted. But those were just appetizers. What do you want?" Amanda whispered. "I want you to understand the magnitude of your mistake," Nathaniel replied. "You thought you were stealing from a businessman. You were actually declaring war on a man who built everything he has from nothing, who learned that the world gives you exactly what you're strong enough to take." Nathaniel stopped in front of Vincent, close enough that the other man had to look up to meet his eyes. "Do you know what I did during my first 5 years in construction, Vincent? I worked for a man named Abel Spaulding. Abel taught me that in this business, your reputation is everything. Cross someone, cut corners, break your word, and you're finished. But more importantly, Abel taught me what happens to people who try to steal from builders." Vincent swallowed hard. What happened to them? They learned that men who work with their hands know how to solve problems permanently. The temperature in the warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. Amanda and Vincent exchanged glances, finally understanding that their situation had moved beyond financial or legal consequences. "Nathaniel," Amanda said carefully, "we know we hurt you. We know we were wrong, but we can still fix this. We can fix this." Nathaniel's voice was soft and infinitely dangerous. Amanda, you didn't just cheat on me. You didn't just try to steal my company. You made me doubt my own judgment. You made me question whether anything in our marriage was real. Do you understand what that does to a man? Tears began flowing down Amanda's cheeks. Some of it was real. In the beginning. No. Nathaniel's voice cut like a blade. In the beginning, you saw a successful man you could manipulate. Vincent saw an easy mark he could seduce through his wife. And Clark McCoy saw another victim whose assets he could redistribute. None of you saw me as human. Nathaniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Their wedding picture, taken 15 years ago. Amanda looked radiant in white lace. Nathaniel young and hopeful in his tuxedo. I used to keep this on my desk, he said, holding the photograph up to the light. Clients would comment on what a beautiful couple we made. I was so proud to be your husband. He dropped the photograph and stepped on it, grinding his heel until the glass shattered. But that man is dead. You killed him on Christmas Eve when you decided I was worth more broken than whole. Vincent tried to edge toward the exit, but Corey Banks stepped out of the shadows, blocking his path. Santos Little emerged from another direction, sealing off Amanda's escape route. Gentlemen, Nathaniel said to his associates, please ensure our guests remain comfortable while we conclude our business. For the first time, real terror entered Vincent's voice. Nathan, you can't do this. People know we're here. If something happens, something has already happened, Nathaniel replied. You destroyed my life. Now I'm returning the favor with interest. The warehouse echoed with Amanda's sobbing and Vincent's increasingly desperate pleas. But Nathaniel Hughes was past the point of mercy. He was about to show them what happened when predators chose the wrong prey. Chapter 7, Justice Served. Before we proceed, Nathaniel said, pulling 2 chairs into the circle of light. I want you both to understand something. This isn't revenge. Revenge is emotional, impulsive, satisfying, but temporary. This is justice. Justice is methodical, permanent, and serves a greater purpose. Amanda and Vincent sat in the chairs, hands zip-tied behind their backs, not tight enough to cause damage, but secure enough to prevent escape. Corey Banks and Santos Little remained in the shadows, their presence more psychological than physical threat. The greater purpose, Nathaniel continued, is ensuring you never hurt anyone again. He pulled out a tablet and swiped to a video file. Amanda, do you remember our anniversary trip to Cabo 3 years ago? You insisted on filming everything. The sunset dinner, the beach walks, our private moments in the hotel room. Amanda's face went ashen. Nathan, you wouldn't share intimate videos of my unfaithful wife. You're right. I'm not that petty. Nathaniel swiped to another file. But this video, taken in our bedroom 2 weeks ago while I was supposedly at a job site, this has educational value. The tablet showed Amanda and Vincent in passionate embrace, their conversation afterward revealing details of their plan to eliminate Nathan permanently and make it look like a business suicide. They discussed dosages, timing, and how to ensure Nathaniel's death appeared to result from guilt over financial improprieties they would plant in Hughes Construction's books. You were planning to murder me, Nathaniel said conversationally. Not just steal from me, not just divorce me, actually kill me and frame it as suicide. That changes the nature of our relationship considerably. Vincent's composure finally cracked completely. It was never supposed to go that far. That was Amanda's idea. I just wanted the business. Vincent, please. Nathaniel shook his head sadly. Don't insult my intelligence. I have 6 hours of audio recordings. The murder plot was your suggestion, refined with input from Clark McCoy, who assured you that as the investigating judge, he could control the narrative. Nathaniel walked to a workbench and returned with a manila folder. Which brings us to tonight's actual purpose. You see, while you've been suffering these past few days, I've been busy. Santos, would you please explain what you discovered? Nathaniel Hughes returned to his life, his reputation not just intact, but enhanced. The business community saw him as a man who had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged victorious. New clients sought him out, drawn by his reputation for loyalty and his ruthless treatment of those who crossed him. But late at night, alone in his mansion, Nathaniel sometimes wondered if victory felt different than he'd expected. The house was quiet now, empty of Amanda's laughter and Vincent's smooth conversation. He had destroyed his enemies completely, but the cost was a solitude that stretched out like an endless winter. Still, when he remembered Grant Wilson's children thanking him for giving them the truth about their father's death, when he thought about the 12 families who could finally rebuild their lives, Nathaniel knew he had chosen correctly. Some betrayals demanded absolute justice, and justice, unlike mercy, was something he could live with. Chapter 9. The New Foundation. 6 months later, Nathaniel Hughes stood in the conference room of Hughes Construction, addressing a room full of investors and potential partners. The company had not only survived the attempted hostile takeover, but emerged stronger than ever. New contracts poured in, attracted by Nathaniel's reputation for integrity and his ruthless protection of those who earned his trust. "Gentlemen," Nathaniel said, concluding his presentation, "Hughes Construction has always been built on a simple principle. We honor our commitments, and we protect our partners." Recent events have only reinforced that foundation. After the meeting, Lawrence Fisher approached him. The retired federal judge looked proud but concerned. "You've rebuilt everything they tried to destroy," Lawrence said. "But I worry about you, Nathan. This house, this life, it's empty now." "Empty but honest," Nathaniel replied. "I know exactly where I stand with everyone in my life now. That's not the same as being happy." Nathaniel considered this. "Happiness is a luxury I can't afford, Lawrence. Trust is too expensive to give freely. But I have something better than happiness. I have clarity." They walked through the mansion's halls, past photos of Hughes Construction projects and awards from charitable organizations. The house was immaculate but sterile, maintained by a staff who respected their employer but kept their distance. "The Wilson and Park Foundations want to name you as their keynote speaker next month," Lawrence mentioned. "They're honoring victims of financial fraud. I'll consider it. Nathan, those families see you as their protector. You become a symbol of what happens when someone fights back successfully. Good. Maybe that will deter the next Vincent Walsh." They paused in Nathaniel's study, where he kept the evidence files from Amanda and Vincent's case. Even after the trials ended, he maintained detailed records of their crimes, their punishment, and their current status in federal prison. "Do you ever think about visiting them?" Lawrence asked. "No," Nathaniel said without hesitation. "They're where they belong. I moved on." But that wasn't entirely true. Every month, Nathaniel received reports on his former wife and her co-conspirator. Amanda had aged badly in prison, her beauty faded and her spirit broken. She tried to appeal her sentence twice, both attempts failing when evidence of her murder plot was reintroduced. Vincent had adapted better to incarceration, using his manipulation skills to curry favor with guards and fellow inmates. But his marriage to Christina had been annulled, and his attempts to contact his previous victims' families were blocked by restraining orders. Christina McCoy Walsh had become a cautionary tale in legal circles. The daughter of a respected judge, reduced to a federal prisoner whose own husband had betrayed her to save himself. She spent her days in solitary confinement, protected from other inmates who viewed her as a traitor to her own gender. "There's something else," Lawrence said carefully. "Amanda's sister called my office yesterday." Nathaniel's expression didn't change. "What did Erin Edwards want?" "She wanted to arrange a meeting. Apparently, Amanda has information about other victims, people Vincent targeted before they developed their system. Information she conveniently forgot during her trial. Information she's trading for consideration on her sentence." Nathaniel walked to the window, looking out at the grounds where he'd once planned to build a family. "Tell Erin Edwards that Amanda made her choices. She can live with the consequences." "Nathan." "No." Nathaniel's voice carried the finality of a judge's gavel. "Amanda chose Vincent over me. She chose money over loyalty. She chose murder over mercy. Every consequence she faces is a result of her own decisions." Lawrence nodded, understanding that some wounds never heal, they only scar over. "What about you? What's next?" "Next, I built something better than what I had before. Hughes Construction will expand into 3 new states next year. We'll create jobs, build communities, make things that last. Nathaniel turned from the window. And I'll make sure everyone understands that crossing Hughes Construction, crossing me, carries consequences they can't afford. You're not the same man you were a year ago. No, Nathaniel agreed. I'm better, stronger, wiser. Amanda and Vincent thought they were destroying me, but they actually perfected me. That evening, alone in his study, Nathaniel opened a new file on his computer. It was titled Future Partnerships and contained background checks on every person in his professional and personal life. He would never again be vulnerable to betrayal because he would never again trust without verification. Some might call it paranoid. Nathaniel called it learned behavior. His phone rang, a call from Grant Wilson's son, now 25 and running his own business. Mr. Hughes, this is Leo Wilson. I wanted to thank you again for what you did for our family. No thanks necessary, Leo. Justice doesn't require gratitude. Maybe not, but it deserves recognition. Sir, I wanted you to know, my company is doing well. We're looking to expand, and we'd like Hughes Construction to handle our new headquarters. Nathaniel smiled, the first genuine expression of warmth he'd felt in months. I'd be honored to work with you, Leo. There's one condition. Name it. We want a plaque in the lobby. It'll read, in memory of Mark Park and Grant Wilson, who taught us that some betrayals demand absolute justice. Done, Nathaniel said without hesitation. After the call ended, Nathaniel sat in his empty mansion, surrounded by the empire he'd built and the solitude he'd earned. Amanda and Vincent were breaking rocks in federal prison. Clark McCoy was dead. Christina Walsh was counting decades until possible parole. And Nathaniel Hughes had learned the most valuable lesson of his life. Mercy is a gift for the innocent, but justice is a necessity for the guilty. He opened his laptop and began planning his next construction project. It would be a monument to the idea that some foundations, once broken, can never be repaired. They can only be completely rebuilt, stronger than before. Outside, snow began to fall on the anniversary of the Christmas Eve that had changed everything. But inside his fortress of steel and glass, Nathaniel Hughes was warm, secure, and completely alone by choice. It was exactly what he deserved. And more importantly, it was exactly what he'd earned. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.